especially where land leases are concerned. You want to pick also a copy of the Standard this morning, where State wants 14 days to detain auctioneer behind demolitions that were happening in Westlands Environmental and Lands Courts. Judge Oscar Angote has ordered auctioneers Zachary Baraza to file an affidavit on why his team demolished the Westlands property owned by Niraj Shah against court orders. The judge directed that Baraza and Siuma auctioneers to file their explanation by tomorrow and appear before him on Monday next week. This is in case filed by Shah, who lamented the auctioneer ignored orders from the magistrate court. Let Baraza and Siuma auctioneers swear affidavit explaining the circumstances under which they carried out the demolitions despite express orders of lower courts. Affidavit be filed on Friday, November 11th, directed Justice Angote. All right, we continue with the conversation, but let's just pick up from this. But I think this is very telling. It is harking back to the previous administration under the governorship of then Governor Sonko, where we saw there were predators actually who now went through the files trying to see the 99 years have they really expired, and we saw these demolitions really happening. Could we speak to what is really happening, especially just broadly on land? And every administration that is coming in, we see there is a resumption of these leases. And this primarily is emanating maybe from, I'm not saying, I don't know if these auctioneers were under the directive from maybe the governorship of Nairobi, as it were. But of course, the leases are under, the ambit of Nairobi County. We can talk about City Hall. Any of you can begin with that.
This whole idea about leases has been with us since the late 90s, when Kenya became about 100 years old, the 99-year leases. And there have been major scandals around it. In this city, down on the old roads, River Road, and other areas like that, there's a lot of harassment. It happened, of course, that the owners were predominantly Asian, but not exclusively. Who had been there, and a lot happened, and the state looked aside. But even away from this, we're getting cases where here in Nairobi, you get people evicted by some quote unquote unknown forces. Of course, they're normally known, and they're thrown out whether it's in the rain or at night and so on. I think we have to get some order around this. People who sort of just look around, you go look at the files and they say, oh, this has only got 10 years to go or 5 years to go, so you begin marking it and so on. And you throw out, I would have thought that unless the lease is going to revert to a public use at the end of when it expires, it should revert to the person who held it, who is willing to renew. But you can't kick out a landlord, build another, to bring in new landlords. And the same, it's not adding anything to this economy or anything like that. And hire people who disobey court orders, and we know them and so on. So I would have thought that in one of our headlines that I would have seen something from the police or some other corner picking up this issue like that of the lady in Westlands. You can see if you're going to be an investor in Kenya and you read something like that,
Indeed.
Absolutely, she's appealing to all of the people who can help, the police, the local political leadership, and just calling on everybody's Sarakali's idea, sort of thing, and nothing happens. See the helplessness. So you know that, if you are a foreigner, even if you are a local and you're not on the right side of things, you could be treated similarly. That we must respect the law, and there's no merit in changing ownership of a piece of land in Nairobi from a Shah to whoever else is going to be of our local names. If you're just going to put up another, a group of flats from, that were there, I really think there's something fundamental wrong there. And we're all looking aside. That should not be the case.
I think I would look at the bigger picture. It's not just about these leases for the houses in Nairobi. We're seeing it about the leases for plantation farmers, investors, plantation farmers. You saw it in Thika for the pineapple.
Yeah, we want to do now apartments.
You're now seeing the one in Kericho. You know, we're simply saying, you know, you took our land, this is originally ours many years ago, so you get out. I think, look, we cannot do this kind of things and then at the same time say we want investors into the country. You can't. I mean, the basic law is that if your lease expires, you can have it renewed. And if there is not going to be renewed, then there has to be a reason why. You apply, there's a process. But this issue of the predatory arrangement where somebody is waiting when you have only a few months to the expiry of the lease, then they start turning down, like what happened here, 2015, they start turning down the payment of land rates because they were timing this thing is coming around the corner. And then using government institutions. The auctioneer is not licensed. The policeman, or the court order is fake. It's delivered by a police. I mean, you can't. And then you don't see action taken really on, particularly on the government officers. These people have explained. They've been going to Nairobi Metropolitan, they've gone to Nairobi City, all along, but, you know, no serious action really. It is like everyone, senior people in government are keen. These are prime lands worth hundreds of millions. In Karen, you have seen it in Lavington, you have seen it in Westlands, and they're being timed. And it has happened in the last 10 years. And, you know, especially since the county government came in, but it's been even before then, but it's happening with the knowledge of senior people in government, because that's an opportunity for you, people in the lands ministry and people in political whatever ladders up there, to try and get a prime property by simply saying your lease has expired, we're not renewing it. And you take that property and put it in auction. I mean, that's not really the way to do. Or even these plantations. I mean, you cannot do those kind of things. And then you say you want to invite investors. We have seen every day threats from Mount Kenya farmers on the borders with Meru, to these guys in Muranga, to the ones in Kericho. Everywhere it seems to be the chorus. We want the land. And the moment they get that land, it's not about the tea.
Yes.
People start converting it into some other something. And in any case, it's
subdivisions of a land. Yeah.
Yes. And in any case, it's particularly for those farms. If the issue is about our people who have been working there, I mean, what have you done as a government? Your people have been working on those plantations from the time of the British, 200 years, and you have not done anything to help them. And now you are complaining the companies should do something. I mean, really, I don't think, you know, they should leave the place, because even the ones who are not in the company's estate, at least those ones have income. They have managed to educate their kids and whatever, but those who are outside, even the company, those plantations, are suffering even worse. So I think this is not good for investors, and it sends a wrong message, really.
Well, we should learn from Mugabe with the white Africans.
Going to use that example of Zim, where they took out all the white farmers, as it were, and sent them. I mean, a lot, and they went elsewhere. I'll touch on that one. But what happened after that? People came in, they took the land, and they couldn't do anything with it.
Indeed.
And then the country just went down, and
where is it right
and
now?
then you're having, I don't know, a million sort of, I don't know, units of currency of a billion units of currency equivalent to $1. Yeah, the economy just went south. And those people who left there went to Madagascar, and Madagascar welcomed them with open arms. Madagascar had land, plenty of it, and these guys went in and they started doing what they were doing successfully in Zimbabwe, in Madagascar. Right? Have we ever heard of Madagascar issues anymore politically in the last 7-8 years? They used to feature every time there was, those elections, what have you, and there's all those things. Madagascar is very quiet because the economy is beginning to grow as a result of this.
They're even exporting food now to Zimbabwe.
Exactly. Now, if you look at what Bilo is saying, all these land cases and everything else, I'd like to believe that this case that has happened to this lady, the incoming government has talked about the rule of law.
Correct.
This is a very good opportunity to demonstrate the rule of law. Right? It's the government system itself that has broken the law. How do you apply the rule of law to the people who should uphold the law? That's a very interesting conundrum for the government to look at now, because therein lies the cause of corruption in this country. Here you have a whole bunch of people who are all within the government system, the policemen, the whatever it is, all these people, the auctioneers are licensed
even
by an act of parliament.
Even the judge system, whoever issued that.
So this whole thing, for me, is an acid test about the way we want to approach the lack of working within the law by the people who are supposed to retain the law. And the person who has suffered is an innocent Kenyan as a result of that. Right? Remember, a few years back, the Asians who have been crying for it were made of an official tribe in Kenya. There are people who have invested in this economy for years and years, and they're actually entitled to live in this country.
Yes.
Right? And so, if this is not sorted out and done properly and judiciously and expeditiously, then it will be sending the wrong signal to investors.
Mm-hmm.
Because the one thing we have done very successfully over the last 10 years or so, was to actually improve the laws about doing business. So the laws are there, they're great. And that is why we moved from 130 odd something in the ease of doing business up to about 56. It's because the instruments were in place. It is now the application of those instruments that will move us from the 50-something we are into the teens, if we are really serious. And whilst this may seem to be a little thing, I think for me, looking from the business community, it is a huge, huge opportunity to actually say, yes, we are serious about business people coming into this country. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that person who, I mean, the whole mechanism of how this thing happened, when it comes through, and you're beginning to see the shoots of how it happened, yeah? People obtaining fake documents, going to the police and this and doing that, and then all of a sudden, a licensed auctioneer comes, takes that thing without checking its authenticity and doing whatever it is, because that is what a registered professional should be doing. Right? So the professional associations are under question. What kind of people are you licensing? How do you relicense them every year when they can't even do a basic thing like checking the authenticity of a document? Yeah. So it may seem like whatever it is, one small family sort of being evicted from a small plot in School Lane, but it raises a lot of questions about the system that allowed that to happen.
And tomorrow it might be you or me.
Yeah. And I don't know what is wrong with School Lane. This is the second time it has happened in School Lane.
But I wanted to come here, Diba. I think my colleagues have really brought this very well. I think we need to condemn these goons in the strongest terms possible. And I challenge the judiciary. We have a strong judiciary, all the way from the CJ. Let's determine this thing with the shortest time possible. Let's signal out there. You might say it's a nation or whatever, but tomorrow might be you or me. And I think and you're like, God, where is justice? Where is justice? And that's what everybody's crying for. Because I've been this damn thing, I've done all this, and I like the point Bill is bringing. At times it's very deliberate. You want to go the pay rates and all, but they come and you have not been paying your rates. And I think it's, what did I say? Sonko going there, and MCA is going there. MCA is there and they say, we want some money. And there's your association. And people are saying, if you take to the court, it will take 10 years. There's the CJ and her whole team. These are the things which should send a very clear message to somebody, not even in the Kenya, outside there. Very, very clear in my view.
But thank you. We wanted to, I think, on the issue that is being politicized, especially on the campaign trails, we can take case in point of the tea estates. There has been, for the longest time, protracted ever, the debate on the mechanization of the tea pickings in the tea estates as well. And this is just speaking also to some of the multinationals that we have under the leases right now. Mm-hmm. And some of the politicians, also trying to play into the emotions of it by, telling the residents, this huge tract of lands were taken from us. It's high time that we actually reclaim them back. It's the same narrative that is being played out here. And from this particular forum, what could we tell some of this? Because you will hear them, speaking against mechanization of the tea pickings. No, but when they're off the rails, they'll tell you, what, this is just for political expediency, right? But even us, of course, we are for the mechanization. But because the people on the ground, they don't want to, you have to actually play to their teams.
You can't ask investors to come into a country and then you don't want them to be competitive. Our tea, let me tell you, I was in tea sometime. We are not competitive. You can't compete with Sri Lanka on some of the type of teas that we produce, on the orthodox tea, for example. You can't, and you cannot be competitive because in other parts of the country, people are using, mechanized. Farming is mechanized completely, from plowing all the rest to planting to harvesting. I mean, everything. We are doing, so everything of us is still manual. We still have our mamas digging the farms for the maize instead of using mechanized system. So when you now tell a company, you cannot use mechanized harvest and you have to employ, and then the cost. And then you want those people to be competitive. And then we say, oh, why is our tea price is very low in the auction market? So there are a lot of factors, really. I think we must look at, as a nation, we must go beyond the politics of this thing. Sometimes it's not just politics about helping the people, it's about the opportunity, the land. It's the land that people are going for. Because, an extra 1,000 acres, and they saw it. If Mranga started by pushing Del Monte to seed about 700, 800 acres. And now everyone wants to push those guys, so that we need some land.
But I think Bilo has started a thing that I think we should explore a bit more. Look at the Munya reforms in tea, when he set a minimum price for tea. Why was it necessary to set that minimum price? It's because the cost of our tea was higher than it should be because of the way the value chain is actually organized. And you start from the plucking of the tea and the working in the tea estates and so forth and so on. Those costs would reflect eventually at the tea auction.
Correct.
In Mombasa. Right? And if your tea cannot compete globally, because those prices there reflect the global changes in the price of tea. And let's remember that Mombasa's auction is the second largest in the world. I think it's the largest now.
Is the oldest.
It's the oldest. But I think it's also the second largest in the world in terms of the volume that it
having all over, from Rwanda up to everywhere.
So if it is competing with the largest, so if the prices in the largest one are going down, you can't sort of keep your prices here and expect to sell. People go and buy in another place.
They've gone to Dar es Salaam. It's cheaper.
So
direct sales. Yes.
So
after those rules,
when you start talking about remove all these mechanized harvesting, whatever it is, and so forth, you are talking about the death of the tea industry in this country. So let us look at the big picture, right? There is something happening at this level, and it's a reflection of the need globally for us to remain competitive. It will create a change in the dynamics of employment, utilization, and everything at that point. What the governor of the county should be saying, fine, this is the reality. How can we take all these people who are experienced in certain things and so forth and convert them and give them other jobs in that part of the world, right? I know I always buy a lot of vegetables and stuff like that when I pass through that area. So there's an opportunity in some of the small holdings to do something different. Can we add value to tomatoes, to potatoes, to whatever it is, that those people would be able to grow in that area? Should we look at a shift rather than hanging on to this thing called tea and saying, I can't do anything else apart from tea, and I must make sure that tea works for me, when tea actually will only work for you if it works for other people, right? So I think this myopism that we have around looking at this, what I call populist issues, has to change.
But it's not even coming from the politicians, over the trade unions. The supervisors are actually, mobilizing these people and telling them, oh, you should not be actually off.
But it is exactly the same as a politician.
But it is we have an example of it. We have the example of computers. And I remember it was a very common question in the exam about computers. And computers will create unemployment. Look at the narrative today. And that's the narrative we are saying we need to see forward. What opportunities are we creating? If your coffee tea is more so expensive, you even said it that in that world market. And I think it's a way we look at productive utilization of the resources we have. And what's the best resource you have than anything else? Land. how much can we get out of that land in terms of productivity? And we have said the same view here. If I can make that tea more productive, I don't even have to give a subsidy at the retail level, at the supermarket. So if we get back to look at that tea, how much can we get out of the cup? Leverage on technology. And that's what we're doing most of the things today. There's something which was trending in CNN, how they are layering fish in the Abu Dhabi. Oh, you should watch it. And then it's from there they are layering something else. From there they are using it for something else. It's amazing. By leveraging on technology, by leveraging on the opportunities from that. The same thing you go to even at these teachers' colleges as you go through the Kerio Valley, Tabach. Yeah, they have an interesting way they lay their chicken and fish. The fish are all here. They have fish farms, but here they have chicken. And they're actually feeding on the droppings.
It's the other way around. The chickens are on top of the fish.
The chicken on top.
Yeah, and then they let the droppings go down, yeah.
I was just checking whether we are awake. Roasted poo-poo. Roasted poo-poo is the useful poo-poo for the fish. But this is how you leverage on the technology you're talking about. Indeed, and how you can make out.
Yeah,
I think it's very unfortunate, these claims to take back the estates. We've had the same problems in privatization in this country. They say, well, you can privatize the equipment, but the land cannot be because, this is ancestral land. So what does a purchase mean? It's not even cases where it was taken away 100 years ago by colonial people and so on. Lands that were purchased in more recent years. I think about places like Mumias and all these Nyando and other sugar belt lands that there are. And you begin getting tribal claims or area claims to a property. It's like there is no surrender at the point of receiving a price. The usual exchange that drives commerce. I think that we have to get away from that. And mostly people want to put it either into privatize it, into private personal gain, or real estate, or other different land use systems that at the end of the day are very costly. They take away what should be agricultural land, for example, and put it in real estate. We know what has happened in these neighborhoods, even where we are. So, I think it infringes on private rights, and that also must be respected. And those private rights, one might say, oh, but those who are foreigners, but no, they will be the same when locals are also in there. So I think we have to insist on getting these rights respected. I support the mechanization of tea picking. There were times when there were arguments in our press about the bad conditions under which the tea picking occurs for the payments that they receive, blah, blah, blah. And of course, when you go mechanized, some people in the short run will be put out of a job. But then these people have some skills. Good farmers, where I come from, far away from Kericho and Kitale and other places, had learned these skills when they were out in these areas. There's something called Grimiti, which was agreement, but which was forced labor, though. But now this is voluntary labor. They can go in, they can go out. And I think we are allowing a very greedy spirit to flourish. We mentioned the issues around the Thika, pineapple, Del Monte. Because Del Monte is a multinational, we thought, go for it. But it could have been somebody else. You'll get the same pressures. But those who are in authority, that like for the Asian lady, who can then be able to take away your rights on property that you own. That we must really resist as a country.
Thank you. I need to release Patrick about, I think, yes, the meetings. I know on Thursdays.
Yes.
Board meetings as well. Thank you very much for your, of course, sentiments this morning. We really do appreciate. Maybe parting shots even as we go.
I want to talk about what we are going on to next, about the expressway.
The expressway, yes.
And the land, and the land, the sorting up of land.
Yes.
It is, I think, and it is a study we're doing in a small group at the moment. When you invest in infrastructure, there will be a value addition by that infrastructure. Look at the Thika highway, right? The super highway, as we used to call it. Now it's just a highway. It's no longer super. If you look at what happened around that Thika highway, over a period of 10 years. Yeah, when it was built, you could see for miles on either side, it was just open land. Now you can't see for the buildings that are actually now constructed on either side. Now, the value that expressway created, the highway created, has never been brought back, has never been recovered.
Tangibly.
Tangibly. So, the whole land system in this country needs to change. This issue of the value that the expressway has brought in, how do we capture that value and invest that value in the next project? So, land rates, and I'm going to touch on something that is very tight, very new, very sensitive to people. Land rates must represent the value, the real value that is present with those investments. So if you look at the land rates and the value of land, when I'm going to pay my land rates along the Thika highway, they've remained the same for years. They haven't changed. And yet the value that highway brought cannot be, cannot be obtained.
I hope Sakaja is not listening.
Yeah, that's yeah. I think there needs to be a discussion around this, because it's an opportunity for us to develop this country.
So it needs to be commensurate.
There needs to be some way of taking this, how land prices soar and things happen in this place, and allow that to trickle back into the opportunity for development. And furthering, then we can then say we take a bit of this money and we start paying for the expressway that is going to be there from what do you call this place, from Limuru all the way to Makutano. Yeah, and we can start developing infrastructure in this country by just realizing the land, the elevation of land values, and creating a mechanism to take that and reinvest it. So I just wanted to put that out, and I know I'm going to be short because I can see that my land rates, for example, I mean, how can the county government of Nairobi operate when the land rates people are paying are from 1963?
You see, I think Patrick has only looked at it from one aspect. First, I think the value is reflected in the land value itself, which has gone up. Yeah, for you now as an individual who owns property or land on that highway, that is clearly, it has benefited from that, and it's reflected in the value of the land. But for the land rates, really, it's rates are based on, it's a service. Service is a charge, it's a service charge. It's not a tax. So it depends on really what services you're getting.
Yes.
And for most of the idle lands which have not been built, the land rates have remained the same for some, because there is no value addition in terms of the services you get. In other countries, before the land is even developed, you have all services built in for your electricity, port, roads are done, sewage is there. So you can appreciate if somebody puts additional rates. Yeah. But where there is nothing, from the time that land was created, by God, it has never been. There's no value addition. And you want these guys to continue charging me, increasing their rates. What for? I mean, they have not added any value, they have not provided any service, so they shouldn't be. But, I think but for the ones which are developed properties, of course, then the rates, sometimes they charge, because they charge for other services, sewerage and water and other things.
Actually, I don't have time to debate, I have to leave. But I think, you're spot on in the right direction. When I build this, as the values go up, right? Before that land was even occupied by the Thika highway. By that time, that land already, the value had gone up before people put anything on there. I should get that money back and build that infrastructure. So the sewage, the whatever it is, the access roads. But you look at the development now, it is absolutely crazy. Because nobody did anything about it. But if they had seen the value that thing was going to bring, began to get the money, then you plan the area around the Thika highway properly, put in the sewage, put in the water, put in the electricity, put in everything in a planned manner, I could tell you the value of that place would have been double what it is today. Right? But and that is the opportunity. I'm saying that this kind of thing, when you do this kind of investment, right, you can start just by getting a small value back, plow it back into infrastructure, and that horizontal infrastructure will bring in better investment. And as that better investment comes in, the value goes up, you continue developing the infrastructure on the second level behind them, right? And you keep doing that, effectively you will have a very, very structured way of creating horizontal infrastructure that then drives investment into those places.
Yeah, which drives actually the vertical.
Yeah, the verticals in that place.
But there is both rates, both rates and the capital gain. So that's why in many countries you have both rates and the property tax on it. Property tax varying by the appreciation in value that the area gets, so that you can then plow back the money again into infrastructure, local facility, and pay this costly education. Like in the US, pay university education is mostly under the state system.
Patrick. Right. I think the idea Patrick is trying to advance also is 1963 is still paying the same rate. The same is going also with NSSF, we're paying 200 shillings over time. But I like the issue of, yes, what is the money doing?
There's no value addition.
If we are raising also NSSF, we should see commensurate, sterling services.
I have paid that 200 from 1979 when I started working.
1979, yeah.
I mean, first, in terms of the value, you would expect that they would invest that money, there would be returns, and by the time I asked for it to run into hundreds of thousands. But when I looked at my calculation last time, I said, what? After 40 years of working, my 200 is just...
Right. They could have patched that to do this expression.
That's what I'm saying. There should be an incentive.
And in other countries where you are paying NSSF, then there's the social security is available. If you are unemployed, you get some social welfare allowance. But here, there's no payoff.
There should be some justification.
But the issue is, even if I increase it, I won't see value of it.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
What is the rhyme and reason for you increasing? If Bill is telling you for over 40 years, he's been paying this 200 cents.
I think
when he calculated...
It's not a good example, because it's a savings. You do get back that money when you retire. If you keep it that low, it's overtaken by inflation. It doesn't meet that objective. It only meets the objective of providing a pool of money for the public sector, for the government to borrow, to take and invest as they wish, and so on. And then individuals still stay that poor when they leave, when they retire and have nothing to retire with. The 200 shillings is no longer whatever they paid.
You see, Mohesh, that's not the issue. The issue is, if you look at NSSF, that money collected monthly, it's hundreds of billions.
Yeah.
And the idea was, then the law is very clear, they're supposed to invest in different types of investment tools. And then that return is what gets shared, onto the map. Yeah. But when you look at the NSSF, go and just look at the accounts, it's shocking. Nothing. The money is just going to expenditure. And then you remember all those years, the money is being misused. The land of NSSF is being corrupt, that one is being corrupt. They invested money into a lot of land, which is, prices were inflated. You have got 100 acres, and that is the first place you want to sell to would be NSF. You look for them. They, my friends, have 100 acres. If it is $1 million an acre, you tell 10 million an acre. This thing is a cash cow for government. It's nothing else. So why would anybody want to put 1,000 shillings, 1,700 shillings from 200? No.
And this expressly could have actually still been done by the savings.
By the NSSF.
Oh yes, it could have been done. And that way, it increases when you retire. The strongest PPP we have in the world is actually by SACCOs in Canada. And the people who contribute to them are laughing all the way when they retire. Pension fund. It's possible.
But what sort of...
And that's why you're saying, even if you increase and you're telling us to increase, but I don't see what it's doing. And the whole aspect of having in it something like liquid cash is to invest and grow the portfolio. I'm actually going to talk to a bank after here.
A bank?
Yes. And I'm going to this. Those are the areas we can focus on. Yeah.
All right. Okay. I'll be remiss if we don't talk about yesterday's development as well. But before we head there, let me just pick up this as well. The KDF troops in DRC to cost taxpayers 4.5 billion shillings in 6 months. Bill, I was just raising this particular question here, why we had deployed before the approval of Parliament. So we were doing things in reverse. Was there any emergency that we should have deployed? First of all, the approval came yesterday. What is your take?
I think there is more to this DRC, the love for DRC in the last few years by Kenya that meets the eye. I mean, we were in a rush to bring them on board in the East African community. Kenya is the one that was pushing that. And you've seen our former president, our former prime minister, the trips that are being made to DRC. DRC suddenly became a very cozy darling of Kenya, and there has to be. So I was surprised when suddenly we told KDF is sending 800 troops, and so I think for this kind of expenditures, I was just discussing with my colleague here who is going to foot this bill. Ideally, our soldiers who are in all the other peacekeeping missions. They are funded either through AMISOM or through other UN organizations. In this one, I think clearly, so far at least, is the government that will foot the bill. So I don't know, because the situation in DRC is one where the UN is involved in that conflict. And I would have thought that then there should be an involvement by Kenya through the UN mission. There is a mission of UN that has been there for a very long time. So if it was through that UN mission, then obviously the money would be refunded by UN. But it's not the way we went. It went in the same way we went into Somalia. When KDF went into Somalia, they didn't go through AMISOM.
Yes. It's
after they went in and spent a year or a couple of years that we went applied to have our forces to be under AMISOM. And so even here it seems to be that we went in and probably we will then apply to be within the blue hats, the blue berets of the UN. But otherwise, I think if in fact we are not going to be refunded by UN and this is a taxpayer's money, then I agree with you. I mean, this should have been approved by Parliament. But it's becoming the trend. You know, this thing was stopped after the new constitution, that Parliament must approve all expenditures, anything that has not been appropriated by Parliament. But now, last government, you've seen how much, tens of billions of shillings were spent which have not been appropriated by Parliament. And I think this government should not allow this kind of thing, because budgets must be approved, any expenditure of government must be approved by Parliament. That's the law.
But I think Parliament must rise up to the occasion also, because as you said rightly, Bill, finally you have to pay for this. And Parliament has the option to say yes or say no. They shouldn't wait and be like the proverbial policeman who says, I have officially not been notified. There is a fire, or rather a fight outside my compound, although I can hear it and see it. And I think the other risk in this is that the regional governments around DRC have interests that have created continuous disruption in DRC. We are actually sending in our troops to fight against
M23
interests of members of the East African community.
To go into.
And we're going to get many body bags coming back, funded again from other public sources to disrupt DRC. So then beyond the regional sources, the international interests, the multinationals, they've also funded armies and other forms of disruption within DRC in a search for illegal exploitation of the resources of the DRC. So the economic environment in DRC, I don't know, maybe it's been studied, and I think we need to study it. Others, we're going to be putting up our troops to fight against other public sector funded disruptions, multinational funded disruptions. In DRC, the vested interest in DRC are very huge globally. It's one of the areas now where there's still a scramble to control resources and so on. And that's how you get all these different groups and so on. M23 is supposed to be funded by some governments who are member states of the East African community. So while we are setting up our fellows against persons supported by other governments in the community, I would hope that parallel to that, we have a diplomatic initiative to talk to those other people who fund those disruptions, to ease off, to sort of to back off, so that we can be part of the solution towards a peaceful resolution.
It's a big brother syndrome.
It's really a very dicey area to get into.
But that's what I'm asking you, because we've heard also the government saying, because also it's a shared prosperity. Is this the big brother syndrome that now Kenya also is sort of really developing within the whole of Africa.
If you look at if you put at the politics of DRC or the interests, if I was in this position, you're almost putting our country to loggerheads like countries like Uganda, Rwanda, which are now constitute East Africa. Perhaps we should have taken a back seat as a country. Because, as you read yesterday in the papers, Rwanda is already complaining that DRC is violating its airspace. So there are a lot of things here, but perhaps the UN probably could have found another country which actually, I think it's important to have the peace there, but perhaps maybe there were reasons behind it. We were the wrong candidate to go to take our troops there. And as Bill pointed out, I think this kind of thing is really coming from the taxpayers, then it's something we need to, I hope that's coming from the UN in terms of support there. But it's something we need to be careful as a country. We are almost putting in loggerhead of the things we have been talking this morning about doing commerce within the East African community.
But the East African
the equity, the KCB, they can move there, that's okay. But when you now reach this level of military involvement there, I think another country to me could have played a part we might play there.
Bilo, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, you see this East African, I think what the East African countries have been trying to do is to more or less copy what is happening in West Africa. You know that ECOWAS, that regional security military force then threatens to enter when a country even has a problem. I think this is what they're trying to form when they set up this East African joint military thing. And I think it's fine for a number of those countries because they share borders with DRC and they have already got troops there. Uganda has there, Rwanda, those Burundi, they have troops there. But Kenya, I think, because, maybe because of its obligation as part of the East African community, maybe that's the reason why they have put in there. But I think the thing is the cost is going to be high. This is just 6 months. And I don't think it's a 6 month. These guys are not just going for operations and come out. But they'll be there for the long haul. This is what happened when they moved into Somalia. We were told it's going to take a few months. They are now doing over 10 years.
Okay.
If it's going to be a full year, it's going to be double that amount. And so the cost is going to be, I really would have thought that Kenya would have been better off by contributing a bit to the troops who are already there rather than send, and incur huge costs. But perhaps I think we are looking at, maybe the government is looking at the bigger, the longer term where the DRC's, the country is now becoming more closer to Kenya because of the East African, after being admitted to East African community, and we are looking at the business opportunities. I have even my company was out there recently. We sent the CEO to go and look at what's happening in that country.
Guessing the joint a bit.
But it's a country that is still largely, the main players are those neighboring countries. But Kenya is looking at a number of Kenyan businesses have moved directly into Kinshasa, the banks and others. But I think the cost really for the issue here is about the cost, and I think this is a concern in a country where the government spent that amount to feed people who are starving in 23 counties and ask for donors. And here you're just writing one check to get 800 troops. So it's about the timing, the need. I think I find it a bit.
We're looking for donors, but the checkout is just coming out. Without breaking a sweat. Priorities.
Right.
Professor Gituro Waidant, thank you so much for your valid company this morning. Bill Okero, I really do appreciate your time as well. Bunyasi Sako, thank you so much. Right, a lot of issues that we've raised this morning, and we hope also Governor Sakaja has heard that is going to take a speedy action on what is happening, especially in Westlands, and the issue of leases here in Nairobi as well, with the predators from the county of Nairobi as well, who are always lacking, waiting for that opportunity to frustrate some of these individuals as well. Thank you very much for your valid company. Don't go away. Much more is coming up on the other side of the studio from our headquarters in Mombasa Road. And of course, that is on News Diary.